is apparently a tornado warning right now, so if this all goes horribly wrong, I did it for the Jane. Hi guys, my name is Misty, and welcome to the Book Rat, whether you're on the blog or my channel, BookRatMisty. Right now, Austen in August is going on, and throughout this past year especially, but basically forever, anytime anyone knows that I like Austen and read Jane Austen fan fiction, people always ask me what my favorites are, and though I have covered them individually and I have shown my entire Austen collection, I don't think that I've ever sat down and talked about just my favorites, so that is what we're going to do today, and hopefully I can get through them quickly because I think my battery is dying and there's a tornado warning, so let's get into it. In no particular order, okay, maybe in slightly particular order, because this is actually the first retelling that convinced me that Jane Austen retellings and Austen-esque fiction were actually worth reading, because when I first started reading them, I had a string of duds and they were horrible. This little baby turned it right around. This is Sanditon by Jane Austen and a lady, the lady being Marie Dobbs, and this is a continuation of Austen's uncompleted novel, Sanditon. I have read another one, which might be my least favorite Austen retelling, so make sure you pick up the right one. The one by Julia Barrett. Move along. But this one is just so good. So good. I really feel like she captured Austen and where she was going, and it just, I love it. I love it, and I've reread it multiple times, and I'm probably due for another reread. Really, really good. Then we have Austenland by Shannon Hale. This one is divisive among Janeites. A lot of people don't like it, they find it fluffy, but though it is, it's also very fun and lively and cutesy contemporary that isn't a retelling so much as they look at Janeites and how ridiculous we are, and it's kind of like a Jane Austen theme park, and it's amazing, and I want to go. I haven't seen the movie yet, so I can't say how it compares, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. If you're a fan of Shannon Hale, that won't be surprising to you. Then we have Ostensibly Ordinary and Ostentatious, which I have as an audiobook, so can't show you. Both by Alyssa Goodnight. These are contemporary magical realism stories that are not out there magical realism. So if you feel like magical realism is not your thing and you don't like it, these are much more subtle, kind of on that end. And they're also subtle when it comes to the Jane Austen retelling aspect. Again, they're not really retellings. They are contemporary romance that can stand completely on their own. But they use Austen stories and use Jane Austen herself as a sort of framework for the magical realism. They are riotously funny, very, very clever. I love the tone and the voice of the main characters. They've got some steaminess if you like that, and they're just really well done. Big fan of Alyssa's writing. Then we have one I've talked about plenty before, and that is Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, The Last Man in the World by Abigail Reynolds. This is a traditional retelling, so this is set during Regency England. It's not contemporary, it's not a continuation, it's a what if. So Reynolds does these sort of Pemberley variations where she takes the story of Pride and Prejudice and then finds a point of divergence where it could split, it could go differently if this little thing happened differently. That's the case with all of these in that kind of series, so lots and lots and lots of P&P retellings that take slightly different paths. This one is my favorite. Now, I can understand why it won't be everyone's favorite. First of all, some people don't like the sexiness in the retellings, and this one gets pretty steamy. This one also gets a little angsty. It's a little melancholic, and I can see why people wouldn't like that, but something about this just really, really works for me. I think she understands the characters really well, but also projects what they would be like in those slightly altered circumstances really well. So this one is a favorite, and I've read it to pieces. It's a wonder that the spine isn't entirely broken, because I can't tell you how many times I've read it. Moving back to contemporary, we have Persuade Me by Juliet Archer. This is a modern retelling of Persuasion, and thoroughly engaging. First of all, there aren't a ton of Persuasion retellings out there, so it won me over on that alone, but it's just clever the way it reinterprets it for kind of a modern setting. Just really pulled me along, and again, because it is contemporary, even if you're not a fan of Austen or haven't read Austen, this would totally work as a contemporary romance on its own. It just has those little bits extra and those little Easter eggs for fans of Austen. Speaking of stories that don't have a lot of retellings, because most of them tend to be Pride and Prejudice, we have There Must Be Murder by Margaret C. Sullivan. This is a retelling of Northanger Abbey. Very, very quick if you're looking for something light and fun. I personally love Northanger Abbey, so I was so excited to see a retelling of it. And again, really, really funny and lighthearted. It captures that exuberance and silliness and melodrama of Northanger Abbey, and it kind of pokes fun a little bit at Catherine and her gothic sensibilities, and just super fun. With bonus points for being Northanger Abbey, because Henry Tilney is the best. For something totally different, we have For Darkness Shows the Stars by Diana Peterfriend. I think a lot of people don't realize that this is actually an Austen retelling, and again, it's a persuasion one, so a rarity, but even more of a rarity because it takes the story of persuasion and projects it into a futuristic dystopia. So totally different than any other retellings that I've read and that I can even recall. There really aren't a lot like that out there. In fact, I'm struggling to name one other one. Again, it stands on its own completely as a sci-fi dystopia set in the far future. You don't have to know the story of Persuasion in order to enjoy this, but if you do know Persuasion, there are going to be so many nods to it throughout that you're like, oh man, it's Persuasion. The follow-up to this book is a retelling of The Scarlet Pimpernel. Just basically the whole series is such clever reworkings of classics. Really, really big fan. Back to the traditional Mistaking Her Character by Maria Grace. Now this is another one that kind of uses what-if scenarios to tell a completely different story. And this one pushes them even farther than most what-if retellings do. Most of them start with the main story of Pride and Prejudice and kind of hit a point a third, halfway, whatever, through where they diverge from the path. This one starts in a completely different place. They are not going to meet the way they did in Pride and Prejudice. They have not been raised quite the same or lived the same lives as they did in Pride and Prejudice, but it uses the characters and the kind of base plot points to really project out there who would they be in this scenario and would things play out the same. For that reason, some die-hard P&P fans might not like it because they might feel it diverges too far, but I think it does a really, really good balancing act of keeping the core of the story while really being its own thing too, and I think Maria has a really good handle on not just fulfilling the story plots, but projecting consistently who they would be in these changed circumstances. They wouldn't react the same, they wouldn't feel the same, people around them wouldn't be the same, so it's kind of a really interesting study in what-ifs, and it all takes place at Rosings Park, where Elizabeth has been raised, so very, very different. I mean, she wasn't raised at Rosings, but in the vicinity of Rosings, so totally different. Really, really interesting. And I will be reviewing the follow-up, which looks at Lydia Bennet in Austen in August. We're getting down to the end, I know this is a lot, but up next is Epic Fail by Claire Lezebnik. This one is contemporary YA and just super cute and funny. Again, something that I think you would like even if you're not a fan or are unfamiliar with Austen's work, but if you are, there are those nods. But mostly it's just fun and light and brightening and happy-making. Really, really cute story. Same for A Weekend with Mr. Darcy by Victoria Connolly. This one is adult contemporary, and it's sort of loosely retelling, but it's also about retellings. It's about kind of a scholar in the field of Austen who is working a conference, and I'm not sure what it was about it, other than I just kind of fell in love. I mean, it's sort of standard contemporary romance, but it was just so charming. Back in the somewhat traditional realm, I have Murder at Mansfield Park by Lynn Shepherd. Now, this one is kind of like an honorable mention. It's been a long time since I read it, and I'm not sure how much I really love it for what it is. Maybe I did, I really don't remember. But I mostly love it because of what it does with the story of Mansfield Park. Mansfield Park is not my favorite. This turns it on its heels, murders off some characters I really don't like, and makes a character that I do like the focus. So, not gonna win everyone over, especially if you are a fan of Mansfield Park, but if you had some problems and if you liked Mary Crawford and thought she reminded you of Elizabeth Bennet, look into this one. And lastly, I'm going to give an honorable mention to another one I'll be reviewing this year, and that is Interference by Kay Honeyman. This is described as Emma meets Friday Night Lights, and though I haven't watched Friday Night Lights, so I Can't talk about that. I definitely see the Emma references in it. I'm not gonna go out on a limb yet and say it's one of my favorites because I could still just be caught up in its web and still, you know, riding high on how much I enjoyed it, and maybe it will fade from memory. So I'm not gonna put it in the favorites yet, but I am kind of tempted because this drew me in right from the beginning with fantastic voice, really fun nods to Austen, but a story that stands on its own, and I liked it all the way through. Tore through it, really liked it, so in all likelihood, this deserves a place on the favorites list as well. So that is a sampling of my favorites. Across the board, traditional, contemporary, futuristic, magical realist, dystopian, it's all there, which shows you how wide of an influence Austen has. And actually, speaking of, that's not all. The Duff by Cody Keplinger definitely deserves a spot on the list. I've never seen this billed as a Pride and Prejudice retelling. I haven't really seen anyone talk about it being a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but it totally is. I can see the influences all the way through. I know that I've seen Cody Keplinger talk about Jane Austen on Twitter, so she's a fan. Whether it was marketed as one or not, it definitely hits a lot of those notes. Now, it's its own thing, and it's kind of subtle how it's worked in there, but the whole time I was reading it, I was like, P&P, this is P&P. So that was everything. There are tons and tons and tons more out there that I haven't read, and even a lot that I have that I really, really like, but just aren't necessarily absolute favorites. So no slight to any of the other ones. There were so many that I almost pulled off of my Jane Austen shelf and was like, no, I have enough. I really need to just narrow it down to absolute favorites. But so many good ones out there. If you're looking for more titles, make sure to watch my Jane Austen collection video. I have added to the shelf since then, but it covers most of what I own, and all kinds of other Jane Austen fan fiction are covered in Austen in August. This has been going on for 7 years now, so lots and lots of books out there to take a look at and have been reviewed and have been featured, and their authors have talked about their inspirations and all that. So I'll leave a link below to this year's Austen in August so you can stop over and check it out and win some things, including an international giveaway for book of your choice out of any that I've ever featured in Austen in August, including all of these lovelies. So stop by, check that out. But as I said, those are my favorites. For now, I'm sure more will be added to the list as I continue my love affair with Jane Austen, but for now, that's a nice sized pile to get you started. But that is all for today's video. I will see you guys again soon for some more Jane Austen, and of course, every single day for the remainder of Austen in August. But until next time, that is all for now. Thanks for watching and happy reading!